Hello class, it's Professor Streeter. My plans to have a live virtual class today were foiled by the snowstorm. Hope y'all enjoying the snow out there. But I thought I'd spend a few minutes looking at the assignment for week 3 on D2L and sharing with you a Google Doc that we were going to look at today with some questions about the myth of Sisyphus and what it tells us about the meaning of life. And I'll show you how to get into that document, and you can share some of your thoughts about that this week. Okay, let me then go to our homepage. And I announced the cancellation of today's class. I try to keep you updated with important announcements. Here's week 3, and we're looking at Susan Wolf on meaning. That's a picture of Susan Wolf, professor of philosophy, before she gave a talk on value theory and the meaning of life. I've also shared here a picture of Kwame Anthony Appiah, who does a weekly ethics column in the New York Times. He's an interesting philosopher of ethics and other areas of philosophy, and he wrote a short piece in our book called "What Will Future Generations Condemn Us For?" And so in addition to the Wolf piece, I wanted you to look at that as you begin to think about what you want to do for your second essay this semester. So in the second half of the semester, you'll have a chance to write about a topic that interests you. And so the Appiah is looking at social and ethical issues that he thinks are really important today from his perspective. And he tries to explain the importance of those issues by imagining that we move into the future. What will people say about us in the future? And so that's his way of sort of a thought experiment, trying to come up with a rationale for why we should care about certain ethical issues more than others. And so that's something that you can do on your own. Okay, what kinds of ethical concerns do you have? And I hope you are able to explore them in your second essay this semester. Okay, so the weekly discussion is not on Appiah. It asks you to look at Wolf's essay on happiness and meaning. And I've just adapted a question from the end of the chapter. Imagine Sisyphus, who's condemned by the gods, pushing that rock up a hill. And in some versions of the myth, we're asked to imagine him over time kind of getting into the groove of that work and getting into sort of a Zen space and being satisfied with the work that he's doing. We can imagine Sisyphus wanting to push the rock up the hill. So the task each day is something that satisfies his deepest desire. He's kind of at one with the task. I don't know if you've ever been in the zone that way, been in the flow, but we can imagine Sisyphus in the flow. So it's all he wants. He doesn't have any other desires. And so from Heathwood's perspective, his life is good. He's satisfying his desire. From the hedonist perspective, his life is good. He's happy. The question is whether there's still something to be said for what's missing from Sisyphus's life. And for Wolf, that leads into thought about meaning. For Hooker, it leads into thought about meaning and other kinds of things that we care about in our lives. So from the point of view of Sisyphus, even if he's happy and satisfying his basic desire, is there something missing from his life, like from his point of view, or from our point of view? What would we say about that? So that's your task, and some of you have shared your thoughts about that for this week. In addition to the discussion, I was going to work on this activity today in the virtual class, and so I'll take this opportunity to show it with you, to share it with you. So here's the document, and you have access to it in D2L. And I'll make it full screen. So again, read the essay, think about the essay, think about the comment you shared on the discussion board, and then come into this document this week and share your thoughts about at least some of these questions. What's the lesson that you take away from the myth of Sisyphus? That's the first question. And to write your answer. You just enter one of these boxes and make sure to put your name. If you run out of room, you click here to create a new row. So don't write in somebody's row or add your name to somebody's row. Just create a new row by clicking this box. Okay? And then, so there's other questions here, again, for you to consider. What does the myth of Sisyphus tell us about the nature of the good life? Can your life go well without being meaningful? Why or why not? I'm interested in what you think about this. Explain the distinction that you see between objective and subjective qualities as you understand it. Here, I'm looking for an example. What's an example of an objective quality? What's an example of a subjective quality? And what's the difference? So here, come up with some examples of your own and explain the difference. This is a useful worksheet or activity for you to use as a way of gauging how well you're understanding the reading. And you can share your thoughts with your classmates, and your classmates can read what you're writing. It's a shared document. I'm reminding you of what the ancient Greeks called eudaimonia, which translates as having a good demon within. This is the word that we translate as happiness in English, but it has a sort of thicker meaning in the ancient Greek. Eudaimonia. Maybe a better way to translate it is well-being, thriving. So are there objective measures of well-being, or is well-being just a matter of satisfying your desires or feeling from the inside that your life is going well? Think about the United Nations attempt to promote higher quality of life around the world, right? What is the measure of a higher quality of life? I don't know, access to decent health care, access to adequate education, the protection of certain basic rights. And we can give sort of economic sustainability. There's ways of measuring that objectively. And we could say that even if someone is sort of feeling like their life is going well, or feeling like they're satisfying many of their desires, right? If they don't have access to decent healthcare, access to decent education, we could say that they're not thriving as much as they could, right? Or something along those lines. So I'm just trying to get you to think about how you measure well-being. Is it a purely subjective state, or are there objective measures of well-being? And if you think there are objective measures of well-being, how would you begin to describe and identify them? Okay? And then finally, what about meaning? Is meaning a purely subjective state? Right? Is meaning just a matter of how things feel on the inside? Or is there something that we can say about a person's life from the outside to explain, what makes it meaningful? Okay, or, I think as Wolf thinks, meaning has both a subjective and an objective component. And so I want to know what you think, though, and what your reasons are for that. Okay, so again, you can share your thoughts on some of these questions, and you'll get credit this week for participating in this activity, even though we weren't able to do it live. Alrighty, so let me come back here. I've shared this week with you some videos on the good life, focusing on Heathwood's thesis and criticisms of Heathwood's thesis, and then shifting to what Hooker thinks. Hooker thinks that there are objective measures of well-being that go beyond hedonistic pleasure and go beyond the merely subjective desire satisfaction that Heathwood focuses on. Of course, from Hooker's point of view, satisfying your desires is one component of the good life, and so is pleasure. But there's more to your well-being than pleasure and desire satisfaction. And so Hooker is trying to make that argument. And so is Wolf when she turns to questions about meaning. So I've shared some thoughts about that there. There are also some crash course philosophy videos on the good life. We're starting to prepare for the essay, and that's really the focus this week and next, beginning to write your essay. So here's a crash course video about the good life, and some videos from Wi-Fi, which are each by different philosophers on, what does Plato have to say about the good life? What does Aristotle have to say about the good life? So other philosophers, many of whom we'll be reading together in this course. But this gives you a kind of a glimpse into what these philosophers have said about the nature of the good life. Okay, I've showed you the week 3 discussion, and then the quiz this week, if you haven't done it yet, is due on Sunday. I've asked you to look at readings from last week, Heathwood and Mill and Nozick, and there's 10 multiple choice questions on those readings. So if you haven't done that yet, make sure to complete that this week. Okay, I've shared course materials here for your essay. There's a reading for argument template, and here, this is meant to help you track the argument in the essays that you're reading, right? Especially the essays you're reading for your own essay. So if you're focusing on Heathwood, use this template. It's a document that you can use to track the main thesis that you think Heathwood is making. And here, I'll make this big. And the, excuse me, I'm having trouble moving the cursor. Here we go. So the first box is for, what's the main thesis that Heathwood is making? What's his argument? This is on the first read. So the first time you read a piece, skim it. Look at the first paragraph and the first and last sentence of each body paragraph, and then look at the conclusion carefully. And based on that first read, what can you say about the main thesis or argument that the author is making? Let's say you're focusing on Heathwood. Start keeping track of key concepts or principles that the author is using to make the argument. Describe or identify the main line of reasoning that supports the thesis. And then what's the conclusion? Again, in your own words. Or you could put quotes in here to keep track. So this is sort of a template to help you track the argument in what you're reading. And then on the second read, break it down paragraph by paragraph or section by section. And next to within each box, right, corresponding to each paragraph or section in the reading, write some sentences, right? What is the main point of that paragraph or that section? What's the main, how does that point relate to the main argument? Because this is, again, a way of tracking on your second reading, sort of breaking it down into chunks, paragraph by paragraph. So I've shared this template with you. I hope it's useful. I've also given you a template for thinking about the structure of your essay as you begin writing the introduction. And so these bullet points really are just things to think about doing in your introduction. That's what you're writing this week. And then if you're curious to see what an essay looks like by a student, here's an example of a sample essay on this topic by a student that I had in previous semester. And so this might help you think about how to structure your essay, just giving you an example of what I'm looking for. It's a good essay, right? It's an example of a good essay, and we could talk about that more next week if you want. Okay, so coming back then to week 3. Just the things to keep in mind. In addition to the quiz, you're turning in your essay introduction with a works cited page this week. So if you click that, oops, let me go to student view, viewing as student. So this is the main thing for the week. I want to see that you're making some progress with your essay topic. So if we go to week 3 and scroll down, here's the essay introduction and works cited page assignment. I've shared the prompt here. Okay, so you're choosing one of the 3 topics for the essay to write about, and open a Google Doc, share that document with me, and give me editor status, and give the title, like your name, then Philosophy 202 INFX Essay 1 Intro. Okay, so that's the document that you'll be writing your essay in for the next few weeks, one document. And then you can, when you're done with the introduction, you can download the introduction as a PDF file and submit it to the D2L folder. But then stay within that Google Doc as you continue writing the paper. I want there to be one Google Doc, and then you download different versions of it as you're submitting it to D2L. Okay, so the first download is the introduction with a works cited page. So make sure that your introduction contains reference let's say to Heathwood, if you're writing about Heathwood, give a quote and a page reference. And then at the end of the introduction, include the bibliographical information for Heathwood's essay. That's just an example, whatever you happen to be writing about. Okay? And then so once you've, again, you're adding the file and submitting it to this folder. If you want to share a comment with me, that's fine, but you don't have to put anything in the comments there. One last thing, since I mentioned it, within the template I shared with you here for the essay argument structure, if you scroll to the bottom, you can see I've got a works cited page example. So that gives you an example of how to do an in-text citation for your essay and how to cite the bibliographic information at the end. Okay? If you have any questions about citations, just reach out to me and we can talk. All right, that's it for this video. I just wanted to make sure that you knew what we were doing this week, and I wanted to share with you the virtual activity that you can participate in and talk a little bit about the essay assignment. Okay, that's all for now. Thanks a lot.